So now we're going to dig right into choosing samples. And I'm going to cover some of the main sample packs that I use in virtually all my percussion. The first one, pretty much everybody knows about it, is Vengeance. Anything from Vengeance is amazing. Pretty much all dance music has Vengeance samples in it. I hear them all the time. The one challenge with them is they can get a little bit tired in that if you're using really well recognized Vengeance samples, people can pick them out. But I usually use them and pitch them up or down or put effects on them, use them as part of a layer because they do have an incredible amount of punch. So anything from Vengeance. Recently, deadmau5 just came out with a sample pack called Xfer, and it's pretty amazing. Lots of kicks, snares, hats, claps, and some effects. So deadmau5's Xfer sample pack is great. I also really love a company called 9-Volt Audio. Definitely check them out. And they have one, because I write glitch hop and breakbeat, they have one called Breakbeat Jinx, and all of the sample and sound design was done by Boom Jinx. Amazing sounding sample pack, lots of awesome loops. And the final one that's one of my go-to sample packs is by Gold Baby. And it's a guy who's taken samples from 808 and 909 drum machines and sampled them out clean and then run them through a variety of different chains. Like one of the ones he uses all the time is tape saturation. And those ones, again, synthesized percussion, has an incredible amount of impact and punch to it. And I use those pretty much in every layer, kicks, snares, claps, things like that. So those are the main sample packs. Let's check out how I've chosen my samples in this track. So just before we dig into that, I'm just going to show you how I structure my percussion. Now in live, I use drum racks. Drum racks are an amazing drum sampler. It's exactly everything that I always wanted in a drum machine but never had until I started using live. So drum racks, thanks Ableton, you guys rock. I used to use Native Instruments Battery, which had, it was a cool drum sampler, but it had a lot of limitations to it, mainly no undo function. So if you ever messed anything up, you lost it all. Whereas in Live, because it's one of the built-in plugins, you can actually undo anything. So it's a really, really stable, good, flexible plugin. So here's a drum rack, and it's got all these sample pads, and you just drag samples into it. So in this case, I usually use with kicks, I use a couple of layers. So I use a subby bottom kick, and then I use more of a punchy top kick. And then if I'm doing little grace note accents, I'll use a grace note kick. So in this case here, I'm using a couple samples from deadmau5's Xfer sample pack. And let's just play them individually for you. So you can see the sample in the window here. And I have this one running layered with a top kick. So this top kick is a lot more punchy and toppy, and when they come together, the whole concept of layering percussion is that each sound on its own is kind of thin sounding, and the more layers you stack up on each other, the fatter the sound gets. Now, of course, there's a delicate balance between stacking too many sounds, so you don't want to get cluttered with it. I find with kicks, usually 2, sometimes 3 layers works really well. With snares and claps, whole different story. I layer a whole bunch of those because the music I make is very snare driven. So here's the top kick. So if we take a look at this, you can see I'm using EQing using the synth's built-in filter. So I'm using a high-pass 24 filter, no resonance on it because I don't want that resonance curve. And I have this high passed at 92 hertz. So it's actually taking out all the sub out of the kick, and you're just getting the top end punch. With the bottom kick, you can see I'm still using a high pass 24 filter, but I have it rolled way further down. So it's rolled down to 40 hertz. So I have this one again. I'm rolling out the low end frequencies because I really don't want those. And I'm using just the subbiness of the kick. Now these two together go out into a common effects chain that they share. So now we're going to get a little bit into plugins. Isotope Trash is a go-to plugin I use on all my percussion and a whole bunch of other elements of my tracks as well. Isotope Trash is it's a multi-effects plugin. Primarily it's a distortion plugin. It does have a compressor and filter and delay actually built into it too, so it is quite a powerful, deep, flexible plugin. But in this case, I'm just using it for distortion. You can see I have active here only the trash section of it, which is the distortion. And trash has the ability to be multi-band, but I'm using it as a single band here. So I'm using a distortion setting called clip control. I'm using a bit of overdrive on it. And here is what I love about trash is trash has a wet dry slider on it. So I don't want to be running a fully wet signal. I just want to be able to control the distortion here, and then I want to add in as much as I want. So I'm mixing the wet signal with the dry. And in this case, I found with the kick, if I was mixing it 100% wet, it just sounded, it took kind of the punch out of the kick. It just got too fuzzy and crunchy. And here I found a really nice balance between the wet and the dry signal. So after trash, I'm using a EQ, Ableton's built-in EQ8. And as you can see, I'm rolling out a lot of the top end because it's a kick. I don't need a lot of top end fuzz in it. I want to roll that out. And I'm also rolling off the bottom end. Now you'll find this is really important for getting super punchy percussion, is you need to start EQing almost every hit, I would say. I mean, I'm using the filters in the sample bank here to be able to EQ each individual hit, and I'm using this on the kick's bus. The reason why you do this is because percussion, you have so many layers of compression and limiting and things like that when you're making a fat beat that every additional compression or limiting layer you do amplifies the sample, and it amplifies any type of low-end rumble or top-end clicks. And you use EQ at every stage in this process to be able to make sure that none of that unaudible low-end rumble or top-end clicking is going to be coming through. You're only getting the section of the EQ spectrum that you want. And so that's one of the most essential components to getting really punchy percussion, is getting really adept with your EQing at every stage. The final plugin in this chain is a compressor, and this compressor runs on the Universal Audio UAD2 card. You can check them out at Universal Audio. Basically what this is a physical model of one of the classic old school analog compressors that just sounds incredibly fat. This one's the 1176 LN compressor. I use it on a lot of my percussion, and yeah, it just makes things sound amazing and punchy. So I have this one running. You'd need a UAD2 card to run it, but definitely a worthwhile investment if you want to add some extra DSP and plug-in power to your system. And the way this one works is I have the attack backed off, so I'm getting the crack of the kick hit coming through. I'm using a pretty high ratio, this 12:1 ratio here. I have a really quick release on it, and you'll be able to see when I play the kick here. Let me just solo it for you. When I play the kick here, I'm getting quite a bit of gain reduction too, so just keep your eye on the VU meter. There we go. So there is our kick layer.